Story 1: Drunken Harassment Leading to Tragedy. The New Year's Eve party was already in full swing by the time Sarah arrived. The house was buzzing with music, laughter, and the sound of clinking glasses. Fairy lights strung around the backyard gave the scene a magical glow, while a chilly breeze reminded everyone of the time of year. Inside, the host, her college friend Megan, had spared no effort in creating an atmosphere of carefree celebration. It was a night to leave the worries of the past year behind and embrace the promise of a new one. Sarah, dressed in a simple but elegant black dress, stepped inside, greeted by a wave of warmth and the aroma of spiked punch. She had been looking forward to this party all week, eager to unwind with her friends after the roller coaster of emotions the year had brought. Almost immediately, Megan spotted her and rushed over, a cup of champagne in hand. "Sarah, you made it!" Megan exclaimed, pulling her into a hug. "Come on. The gang's all here." Sarah smiled and allowed herself to be led through the throng of partygoers. She spotted her usual crew huddled around a game of beer pong and joined them, settling into the lively atmosphere. For the first hour, everything was perfect. She sipped on her drink, caught up with friends, and even laughed at some of the ridiculous party antics happening around her. It felt good to let loose. But as the evening wore on, Sarah's sense of ease began to wane. It started when she noticed him, a man she didn't recognize, watching her from across the room. At first, she thought nothing of it. After all, parties often brought together a mix of familiar faces and strangers. But there was something about the way he stared, his eyes lingering too long, that made her uncomfortable. The man, later introduced as Greg by someone passing by, was clearly intoxicated. His loud, slurred voice cut through the chatter as he made his way toward the drink table where Sarah was refilling her cup. "Hey there," he said, leaning closer than necessary. "Haven't seen you around before. What's your name?" Sarah gave him a polite but curt smile. "Sarah. Excuse me." She moved away, hoping he would take the hint. But he didn't. Instead, he followed her into the living room, where she rejoined her friends. "Sarah. Huh," he said, slurring her name in a way that made her skin crawl. "Pretty name for a pretty lady." Her friends exchanged looks, sensing her discomfort. One of them, Jake, stepped in. "Hey, buddy. Why don't you give her some space?" he said, his tone light but firm. Greg's expression darkened for a moment before he forced a grin. "Relax, man. Just making conversation." Sarah gave Jake a grateful nod. But the encounter left her on edge. For the next hour, she tried to enjoy herself. But Greg's presence was impossible to ignore. He seemed to be everywhere, lurking at the edges of conversations and occasionally making a poorly timed joke that fell flat. Each time their eyes met, Sarah felt a knot tighten in her stomach. As the night crept closer to midnight, Greg's behavior grew more erratic. He was visibly drunk now, stumbling into furniture and slurring his words even more. Sarah did her best to avoid him, but it seemed every time she turned around, he was there. At one point, she slipped out into the backyard, hoping for a moment of peace. The crisp air was a welcome change from the stifling heat inside, and she took a deep breath, leaning against the railing. "There you are," a voice said behind her. Her stomach dropped. It was Greg. "Look. I'm just trying to enjoy the party," she said, keeping her tone neutral but firm. "Can you please leave me alone?" He laughed. A low, unpleasant sound. "Come on. Don't be like that. I'm just being friendly." Before she could respond, he reached out to put an arm around her shoulder. She stepped back quickly, her heart racing. "Don't touch me," she snapped. Louder this time. The commotion drew the attention of a few nearby partygoers, who glanced over but didn't intervene. Greg's face twisted with irritation. And for a moment, Sarah thought he might retaliate. Instead, he held up his hands in mock surrender. "Fine. Fine. No need to get all uptight," he said, backing away. "You'll come around." The comment sent a chill down her spine. Sarah hurried back inside, her mood thoroughly ruined. She found Megan and told her about Greg, hoping her friend could do something. Megan promised to keep an eye on him and told Sarah to stick close to their group for the rest of the night. As the countdown to midnight began, the energy in the room reached its peak. People gathered in clusters, champagne glasses in hand, ready to toast the new year. Sarah stood with her friends, trying to shake off the earlier encounter. For a brief moment, she felt a sense of normalcy returning. 10, 9, 8, the crowd chanted. But just as the clock struck midnight, Greg appeared again. He was staggering toward her, a wild look in his eyes. Before she could react, he tried to grab her arm. "Happy New Year." "Beautiful," he shouted, his words slurring together. Sarah yanked her arm away, her anger boiling over. "Enough. Leave me alone," she shouted, shoving him backward. He stumbled and fell, landing ungracefully on the floor. The room fell silent for a moment before someone snickered. And then the laughter spread. Greg scrambled to his feet, his face red with a mix of embarrassment and rage. "You'll regret this," he muttered, storming out of the house. Outside, Greg fumbled with his car keys, muttering under his breath. The laughter from inside echoed in his mind, fueling his anger. He threw himself into the driver's seat and slammed the door. Despite his obvious intoxication, he started the car and peeled out of the driveway, tires screeching against the pavement. The streets were quiet, the revelry contained to private homes and bars. Greg's vision blurred as he sped through the neighborhood, ignoring stop signs and swerving dangerously. His mind was a storm of emotions: humiliation, anger, and the nagging thought that he had ruined his own night. But those thoughts were fleeting, overtaken by a reckless determination to prove something. To whom? Even he didn't know. The next morning, Sarah woke to a text from Megan. It was a link to a local news article: "Fatal accident on New Year's Eve, drunk driver responsible." Her heart sank as she read the details. A car had collided with another vehicle at high speed, killing a young woman in the passenger seat and leaving the driver in critical condition. The drunk driver had been arrested at the scene. The mugshot accompanying the article confirmed her worst fear: it was Greg. 4 weeks. Sarah couldn't shake the incident from her mind. She replayed the night over and over, questioning her actions. Could she have done something differently? Should she have tried harder to stop him from driving? The logical part of her knew she wasn't responsible for his choices. But the guilt lingered, a heavy weight she couldn't seem to lift. She attended a candlelight vigil for the victim, standing silently among strangers who mourned a life cut tragically short. The experience was both cathartic and devastating, forcing her to confront the fragility of life and the far-reaching consequences of a single moment. Sarah never returned to another New Year's Eve party. Each December 31st, she finds herself reflecting on that night. On the thin line between celebration and tragedy. She wonders how many others have found themselves in similar situations. Unsure of what to do. Hoping that someone else will intervene. What would you have done in Sarah's place? Could her actions have changed the outcome? Or was Greg's fate inevitable? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective might help someone facing a similar dilemma. As Sarah's story reminds us, the line between safety and chaos is often razor thin. In our next tale, we move from a private party to one of the most public New Year's Eve celebrations in the world, Times Square. But even amidst the glittering lights and festive crowds, danger can strike in an instant. Stay tuned for the Times Square attack. Story 2: Times Square Attack. New Year's Eve in Times Square is a spectacle unlike any other. The pulsating lights, the collective cheer of thousands counting down the seconds, and the promise of a new beginning electrify the air. But in the midst of this revelry, danger often lurks in unexpected places. For Officer Daniel Shaw, a seasoned NYPD officer stationed at one of the world's most iconic celebrations, this night would become a haunting memory etched in his mind forever. As the crowd swayed to the rhythm of celebration, Officer Shaw's attention was drawn to a man on the other side of the barricade. Amid the sea of jubilant faces, this figure stood unervingly still. His gaze locked on Shaw with a chilling intensity, a smile curling across his face that didn't reach his eyes. What was he planning? And how could one man disrupt the collective joy of millions in just moments? This is the story of the Times Square attack, a horrifying reminder of how swiftly chaos can overtake even the most controlled environments. The night began like many others for Officer Shaw. After years on the force, he had grown accustomed to the unique challenges of Times Square on New Year's Eve. The crowd was an endless sea of faces, all tightly packed within metal barricades. Tourists marveled at the towering billboards and street performers, while vendors shouted over the cacophony to sell light-up toys and snacks. Stay alert. Shaw, his partner, Officer Karen Miles, said as they patrolled the security checkpoint near 47th Street. Nothing ruins the new year faster than someone slipping past us. Shaw nodded, his sharp eyes scanning the throng of people. It was their job to maintain order, to ensure that the night stayed festive rather than tragic. But even the most rigorous security measures couldn't account for every variable, a fact he was about to learn all too well. An hour before midnight, Shaw noticed him. The man stood about 10 feet away from the barricade, his face partially obscured by the hood of a tattered jacket. Unlike the others who jostled and cheered, he remained utterly motionless. Shaw's instincts kicked in. He nudged Karen and subtly pointed toward the figure. "See that guy?" he asked. "Something's off about him." Karen squinted. "Could just be drunk. It's New Year's Eve, after all." Shaw wasn't convinced. The man's stillness was unnerving. His unblinking stare fixed squarely on Shaw as if studying him. Then came the smile. It wasn't a grin of joy or celebration, it was something darker, almost predatory. Shaw's hand instinctively moved to the radio clipped to his vest. "This is Shaw at checkpoint 47, he said, keeping his voice steady. "Got a suspicious individual on the east side of the barricade. Requesting additional officers." Minutes passed, though they felt like hours. Shaw's heart thudded as he maintained his position. The man didn't move, but his unsettling presence cast a shadow over the area. The crowd around him seemed oblivious, their attention focused on the festivities. Karen stayed close. her hand resting on her holstered weapon. "Backup's on the way," she said. "Let's just keep an eye on him." But then, the man began to move. Slowly. Deliberately. He stepped forward, weaving through the crowd until he reached the barricade. His smile widened as he raised a hand in a mock greeting. "Happy New Year, officers," he said, his voice low and eerily calm. "Sir, I need you to stay behind the barricade," Shaw replied, his tone firm. "Do you have identification on you?" The man chuckled, a sound that sent a shiver down Shaw's spine. "Why so serious? It's a celebration, isn't it?" Before Shaw could respond, the man reached into his jacket. Shaw's instincts screamed at him to act. But the crowded environment made every decision fraught with risk. What if it was just a wallet? What if he was overreacting? In the split second of hesitation, the man pulled out a machete. The world seemed to slow as the blade gleamed under the neon lights of Times Square. Screams erupted as people scattered, creating a ripple of panic through the crowd. Shaw and Karen drew their weapons. But the man was already moving, his machete slicing through the air with terrifying precision. Karen was the first to engage, lunging forward to intercept the attacker. He struck her shoulder with the handle of the machete, sending her sprawling to the ground. Shaw's training took over as he stepped in, aiming his firearm at the man. "Drop the weapon," Shaw shouted. The man didn't comply. Instead, he charged at Shaw, swinging wildly. Shaw dodged, the blade narrowly missing his torso. The crowd's chaos made it impossible for backup to arrive quickly, leaving Shaw to face the attacker alone. A sharp pain exploded across his left arm as the machete grazed him. But he didn't falter. Gritting his teeth, he aimed his weapon again. But the man was relentless. Just as Shaw braced himself for another attack, a burst of electricity crackled through the air. Karen, bruised but determined, had managed to deploy her taser. The attacker stiffened, his body convulsing as the taser's prongs delivered their charge. The machete clattered to the ground, and he collapsed in a heap. Shaw quickly moved to secure him, pinning his hands behind his back as Karen called for medics and additional units. The aftermath was a blur of flashing lights and hurried voices. Medics tended to Karen's injuries and Shaw's arm while officers cordoned off the area. The attacker was taken into custody, his calm demeanor replaced by a vacant stare. Later, investigations revealed his motivations: a deeply troubled individual radicalized by extremist ideologies, intent on causing as much harm as possible before being stopped. For Shaw, the incident left a deep scar, not just on his arm but on his psyche. He replayed the night over and over in his mind, questioning every decision. Could he have acted sooner? Should he have drawn his weapon the moment the man reached into his jacket? The what-ifs haunted him as he stood in the empty streets of Times Square hours later, long after the celebrations had ended. Shaw reflected on the fragility of safety in a world where danger could hide in plain sight. The glittering lights and echoes of joy felt distant now, overshadowed by the chilling reality of how close the night had come to ending in disaster. Stories like Shaw's remind us of the bravery required to confront the unknown, even when the stakes are life and death. But while Times Square may be the world's stage for celebration, danger doesn't confine itself to public spaces. In our next tale, we step into the quiet, personal terror of a home invasion, a nightmare that strikes at the very heart of where we feel safest. Stay tuned for Home Invasion. Story 3: Home Invasion. New Year's Eve at the Thompson family home was always a magical time. Nestled deep in the countryside, the house glowed with the warmth of twinkling lights and the sound of laughter. This year, the family had thrown a festive party, inviting relatives and close friends to ring in the new year together. For 21-year-old Alex, it was a night filled with childhood nostalgia and the comfort of being surrounded by loved ones. But as the celebration faded into the early hours of the morning, that warmth turned to unease. What should have been a peaceful end to a joyful evening became the beginning of a nightmare. Strange noises echoed through the house, and Alex would soon discover that their sanctuary had been invaded. This is the story of the night that shattered the Thompson family's sense of safety forever. The party had been a success by all accounts. Relatives mingled in the cozy living room, sipping on spiced cider while children played games in the basement. The crackling fireplace added to the ambience, casting dancing shadows on the walls. By midnight, the family gathered outside to watch a modest fireworks display light up the rural sky. Hugs were exchanged, resolutions were made, and laughter filled the air. By 3 a.m., the house had grown quiet. Most of the guests had left, save for a few relatives staying the night. Alex's parents retired to their room, leaving Alex to clean up the remnants of the party. The task was tedious, but the satisfaction of restoring order to the house kept Alex going. Once the last dish was loaded into the dishwasher, they trudged upstairs to their bedroom, hoping for a good night's sleep. Yet sleep didn't come easily. The mix of exhaustion and a slight buzz from earlier drinks left Alex feeling nauseous. They lay in bed, scrolling mindlessly through social media in an attempt to distract themselves. The quiet hum of the night outside the window was soothing. And for a brief moment, Alex felt the tension in their body begin to ease. Then they heard it, a faint thud from downstairs. At first, Alex thought it was their imagination. Maybe the wind had knocked something over. Or perhaps one of the guests was getting a late-night snack. They dismissed the sound and returned their attention to their phone. But then it came again. Louder this time. A distinct creak of floorboards followed by the soft murmur of voices. A chill ran down Alex's spine. The house should have been silent, everyone was either asleep or gone. Heart pounding. They sat up in bed, straining to hear more. The voices grew clearer, though the words were indistinct. Someone was definitely downstairs, summoning their courage. Alex tiptoed to their bedroom door and cracked it open. The hallway was dark, the only light coming from a nightlight near the stairs. Carefully, they crept toward the staircase, their bare feet silent against the hardwood floor. Peering down, Alex caught a glimpse of movement in the living room. Two figures dressed in dark hoodies were rummaging through drawers and cabinets. One of them carried a large duffel bag, already bulging with stolen items. The other whispered harshly, their voice carrying a tone of urgency. "Hurry up. We don't have all night," one of them said. "Relax," the other replied. "They're all probably passed out drunk upstairs." Alex's breath caught in their throat. Panic surged through them as they ducked back behind the corner, their mind racing. Should they call the police? Wake their parents? Confront the intruders? None of the options felt safe. But doing nothing wasn't an option either. Alex decided to act. They slipped back into their room and grabbed their phone, dialing 911. Whispering, Alex reported the intruders, giving the dispatcher their address and a quick description of the situation. "Stay on the line," the dispatcher urged. Alex's heart pounded as they crept back to the top of the stairs, phone in one hand, adrenaline surging through their veins. Minutes stretched into eternity as Alex waited for the sound of sirens. But as the seconds ticked by, the intruders grew bolder. Their voices louder and their movements more aggressive. A sudden crash echoed through the house as one of them knocked over a lamp. That was the breaking point. Alex grabbed a decorative vase from a nearby table, clutching it tightly as they descended the stairs as quietly as possible. Their heart pounded in their chest, each step feeling like a gamble. When they reached the bottom of the stairs, the intruders were still engrossed in their looting. Summoning every ounce of courage, Alex stepped into the living room and shouted, "Hey! Get out of here!" The intruders froze, their heads snapping toward Alex. For a brief moment, no one moved. Then, chaos erupted. The one holding the duffel bag bolted for the door, leaving their partner behind. The remaining intruders' face twisted with anger as they lunged at Alex. Alex swung the vase, narrowly missing the intruder's head. They grappled, knocking over furniture in the process. Alex managed to land a blow to the intruder's shoulder, causing them to stumble. The noise was deafening, finally rousing Alex's parents from their slumber. The intruder, realizing they were outmatched, tried to make a break for it. Alex, fueled by adrenaline, tackled them to the ground. They struggled, the intruder's desperation evident as they thrashed and cursed. "Let me go. I don't want to go back to jail," the intruder pleaded, their voice cracking with fear. Alex's parents appeared at the top of the stairs, their shocked expressions quickly turning to resolve. Alex's father grabbed a bat from the closet and joined the fray, helping pin the intruder down until the police arrived. Sirens blared in the distance, growing louder as the family held their ground. The police burst through the door moments later, handcuffing the intruder and taking statements from the shaken family. Alex learned that the other burglar had managed to escape, leaving an unsettling loose end to an already traumatic night. The aftermath was far from comforting. Alex sat on the couch, trembling as adrenaline drained from their body. The police stayed to sweep the house, ensuring no one else was hiding. Their presence offered some reassurance, but it didn't erase the unease. The intruder was identified as a repeat offender with a history of burglary. He admitted to targeting the house after seeing cars parked for the party, assuming the residents would be too intoxicated to notice. While this explanation provided some context, it did little to soothe the family's nerves. Alex's parents praised their bravery, but Alex couldn't shake the image of the intruder's panicked eyes or the realization that things could have ended much worse. The knowledge that the other burglar was still at large haunted them, every creak and shadow in the house setting their heart racing. The Thompson family's home, once a sanctuary of warmth and memories, now felt tainted. Every creak of the floorboards and shadow in the corner of their vision reminded them of the intrusion. Despite upgrading their security system and adding new locks, the sense of safety they once took for granted was gone. Alex couldn't stop replaying the events of that night. Could they have done something differently? Should they have waited for the police instead of confronting the burglars? The questions lingered, accompanied by the haunting image of the intruder's terrified face as they begged for mercy. Months later, the family decided to sell the house and move to a new neighborhood. It was a painful decision, but one they felt was necessary to move forward. Yet, no matter where they lived, the memory of that New Year's Eve would stay with them forever, a chilling reminder of how quickly safety can be shattered. The Thompson family's story is a stark reminder that even in the comfort of our own homes, danger can strike without warning. As the final story draws to a close, you might find yourself looking over your shoulder, questioning every creak in the floorboards or the shadow that seemed just a little too dark. These tales remind us how thin the line between safety and danger can be even during times of celebration. But ask yourself this: how often do we truly prepare for the unknown? What would you have done if you were in Alex's place? Confronting the intruders in your own home? Or standing amidst the chaos of Times Square, face to face with danger? These chilling moments remind us that sometimes survival depends on instinct and a little luck. And yet, even with these stories fresh in your mind, there's always more to uncover. The world is filled with mysteries and nightmares waiting to be told. What about the secrets that are left unresolved? The shadows that linger long after the light has returned? At Wolf Tells, we're dedicated to diving deeper into the eerie, the unexplained, and the terrifyingly true. If these stories left you on the edge of your seat, then brace yourself for what's coming next. Every tale we uncover brings us closer to the unknown, and we're just getting started. So, if you want to hear more spine-chilling tales, be sure to like this video, share it with friends who love a good scare, and subscribe to Wolf Tells for more hair-raising stories. Hit the notification bell to ensure you never miss a moment of the macabre. Until next time, keep the lights on, stay safe, and remember, the wolves are always watching. See you in the next video on Wolf Tells.